Thank you guys.
All right. Hi. Welcome. So, Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Luxottica?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So first off, I myself am a former Girl Scout, so I've got many fond memories from Troop 336. I'm also a proud mom of two little boys who are 3 and 1 now. I grew up in Michigan, so I never thought I would live in Ohio, but I've been here for a little over 15 years now. I went to Central Michigan for my undergrad and in accounting, and my husband is actually also an accountant, so my boys get to listen to a lot of accounting talk at dinner. My first job out of college was actually with the Department of Defense, which was a very unique job for an accountant. I worked in Washington, D.C., and was actually selected for a team that deployed to a field office in Southwest Asia to support the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So a very interesting start for an accountant. And actually, one of the reasons I applied for that role was somebody on my team, a male colleague, had told me there's no way they're going to select a woman. So once he said that, I knew I had to do it. But it became a very great experience for me, and was definitely something to put on my resume that is an interesting topic of conversation. So after leaving the government, I went to work in public accounting and recently joined Luxottica about 2 years ago. And if you aren't familiar with Luxottica, it's a leader in the eyewear industry. So we have brands such as Ray-Ban, Oakley, and Vogue Eyewear. It's a global company with headquarters based in Italy. So I get to collaborate with many people around the globe on a daily basis, which I find very interesting. I actually run our indirect tax team for North America for Luxottica. So I'm not necessarily on the designer eyewear side, but we have a very important role in supporting the business from a financial standpoint. So if you've purchased anything at any of the stores, like at the Kenwood Mall, if you see sales tax on your receipt, that's one of my areas that we're responsible for. So making sure that's correct for everyone.
It sounds very interesting. How are you engaged in your community?
So at the moment, my time is very limited due to the ages of my children. So I'm primarily engaged financially at this point, contribute to a lot of great causes. Before having kids, I volunteered at Save the Animals and with the United Way. So I look forward to re-engaging with both those organizations and others as my kids get a little older. You do to be engaged with your community?
Can you repeat that?
Are there things that you do with your troop or individually to be engaged with the community?
We do try and sell Girl Scout cookies, so I guess that's something. We're trying to save up for Europe. Well, me and a girl in my troop, so we can go to Europe and like kind of tour it, I guess.
That would be awesome.
I also take dance.
Okay.
What are ways you implement self-care in your routine?
Yeah, so this is a bit challenging. I mean, I listened to some of the past interviews and I feel like the women had a lot of great things to share in those, from gratitude journals to practicing yoga. I probably still have some work to do in this area because it's very hard for me to shut off from work and being a mom. But I would say my one luxury that I do for self-care is I try to sleep in maybe an extra hour on Saturday morning. So I feel like I work a lot during the week and we're at a really fast pace. So I'm in much need of a little extra sleep on the weekends. So that's part of my self-care routine.
I love myself some extra sleep. It's the best.
Yes.
I never can get up in the mornings anyway.
Yes, I'm more of a night person.
Same. where would we find you on Saturday morning at 10 a.m.?
So I sleep in, but I am definitely up before 10 a.m. So as soon as we wake up, we like to get outside, get the kids outside, get fresh air. So even in the winter, we try to get out, go for a walk or go to the park. But in the summertime, that's definitely true. I mean, it's harder to do in the winter, but I would say probably out walking around the neighborhood or headed to the park.
It's a little cold for that right now.
It is, yes. We still try to make it outside, but not as long.
Oh, so cold. Don't like it. We will be moving on to your leadership. What does it mean to you, and what do you think your leadership style is?
Yeah, so that's a good question too. I mean, if you look at the definition of leadership, it's really the action of leading a group of people or an organization. So my thought is, in order to be a leader, you need people that are willing to follow you. And I think the best way to do that is really to set an example and to qualities that you want people on your team or in your organization to follow. So I would say my personal style is probably an achiever. I'm a very performance focused and results oriented person. My personality, but I'd say one of the most effective like leadership abilities would be to be able to adapt to the team and the situations that you're in. So I myself needing to kind of adapt my styles in order to work with like certain in order to achieve those results.
You sound very people engaged.
I try to be, but it's definitely a work in process. I mean, it's something that I feel like I definitely have to continually work at to be successful at. And it's one of those things that it's hard to say yourself if you're successful, feedback from others. So I try to also ask my team and my mentors different strategies or approaches they have, or even for feedback to see if I'm being successful as a leader.
Sounds great. What quality do you think that makes you a great leader? And is there a particular leader that you look up to? And why do you look up to that person?
So I would say one of the most important and maybe overlooked qualities of a leader is the ability to really listen. It sounds pretty basic, but I think it's actually a very hard skill to master. You've got to train yourself to be completely focused on what the other person is saying instead of thinking in your head how you're going to respond or what question you're going to ask next. So I find myself very challenged to be able to do this. And also working remotely, I find it difficult to focus instead of multitask. So virtual, it's easy to get lost in kind of doing many things at once because you're not actually sitting in a room with people having a meeting, which makes it hard to listen. And I think people have a sense for if they're listening to them or not. And by really listening, you're showing them or validating that what they're saying is important. So I think that's a very important quality of a leader. As far as a great leader that I look up to, I wouldn't say there's one in particular. I've had the fortune of working with a lot of great leaders, them being with throughout my career. I would say there's a quality that all of them have had that makes me a great leader and that empowering me to achieve my career up. So I mean, that's been very impactful because they would give me kind of opportunities to work on projects that were a little bit out of my comfort zone, but also coach me in a way that helped me not fail. So I think that's important where they gave me that extra responsibility, but we're also watching out for me to make sure that I would be successful.
we always like being successful.
Are there any leaders that you?
I kind of look up to my mom. She's a really great leader overall. She used to work in like a training force where she would like train people in the business that she works in, and I think that's great in being a leader. And I also look up to my sheriff, and he's just a great leader as well.
Great. What are some of the qualities that you think make them great leaders?
Well, they like to talk to people a lot, and I feel like if you like to talk to people, then you will definitely be a great leader, and you know what to do and you know what to say at the right time, so you will like get people like moving and stuff.
Yeah.
How important is it to have a mentor to grow you as a leader?
I think mentors are extremely important. I think it's a difficult thing to get in the right mentorship that's very helpful. But once you're able to do that and find those people, it's invaluable. So, sorry, was there a second part of the question?
Yes, ma'am. What are some of the steps to build that kind of relationship?
Yeah, so building that mentor relationship can be somewhat, because it can be a step is really looking at the people in your life where that you admire and respect, and kind of determining why you admire and respect them, what qualities they have that make that. I mean, when you're in school, it might be a teacher or even a peer in school that's good at something, or a family friend. And then think about what you could gain from that mentoring relationship. I mean, you've got to have goals that you set forth as far as what you want to get out of the mentoring relationship. And then I think the hardest part is you've got to really make the first step to be able to kind of go down the path of establishing that relationship. For example, there's somebody at Luxottica that I've been in many meetings with, and she always has something valuable to contribute. And I find myself always kind of seeking her out in these meetings. And so I recently sent her a note and said, hey, like, I think very highly of you. I think you've been very successful, and I'd like to just get on your calendar for 15 minutes to talk, to kind of find out your secrets of success. And so I have that scheduled, and it's something I try to do often, to connect with different people. And as you start to have those connections, you'll start to understand if there's a connection there, and if it makes sense to continue to try to go down that mentorship path, or if you don't necessarily have that connection with the person and maybe you need to move on and look for somebody else. A mentor is not going to be as helpful if you don't feel like you've got the connection and are able to be open with them and have that relationship.
It's always very important, I feel like, because if you don't connect with somebody, then you can't like get stuff done, I guess, like move forward.
Yeah, that's right.
How do you motivate yourself during these times, and like how do you stay motivated?
Yeah, so that's always challenging, right? Staying motivated. So one of the things I do is I find myself challenging myself in different ways in order to achieve goals. So it can be little things. For example, I'll put 5 things on my to-do list in the morning and challenge myself to try to mark all of them off by the end of the day, along with my regular responsibilities. It's actually very hard to do, and I only do it rarely because there's so many other things that come up during the day. But it's those sorts of challenges with myself that keeps me motivated. There can also be large things. So, I mean, years ago, I felt like I was missing out because everyone in my immediate circle was training to run marathons and running marathons. And I thought, like, I've got to try to run a marathon because everyone else is. So I trained and I told people I was training. And of course, once I told people, I was committed to finishing and doing it at that point. And I ran the Flying Pig. And I don't think I've run more than 5 miles since I ran the Flying Pig Marathon and determined that marathon running is not for me. But it's just those little challenges that you find either within your professional life or personal life that kind of keep you going every day, I think.
Totally.
What keeps you motivated, either in school or with dance?
Knowing that I'll get better with dance keeps me motivated, and like I know that I'll have fun doing it. And then school, just my cat. I like snuggling with my cat, and she makes me feel better about stuff.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
She's my emotional support animal, as I say. Because she'll like come up here on my shoulder when I'm laying in my bed and just like give me cuddles.
Yeah. Is that while you're doing homework or you have to finish your homework in order to snuggle with your cat?
She kind of does it while I'm doing my homework. She'll like come up to me randomly and like sit in my lap while I'm doing my homework. She's really sweet, but my family doesn't like her for some reason. And we are in the middle of our cookie program. Do you have any advice for what sorry, let me rephrase that. Do you have any advice?
Sure.
What advice do you have for Girl Scout young entrepreneurs?
Yes, the cookie program. So have you set goals do you set goals individually, or is it like at a troop level? How does that work?
We kind of do both. I can't remember what our troop goal is, but I know that I want to sell at least 300 boxes, and I've already passed that goal because I worked a lot of booths by myself recently because it's so cold and COVID. But I have passed my goal already. I'm very proud of myself.
Congratulations. Yes, that's awesome. Obviously, it sounds like you don't need advice. I remember back in the day when I was selling cookies, I mean, I would set a goal of not necessarily how many cookies to sell, but the activities I was going to do to try to sell cookies. So we would go door to door, and I would usually get someone to come along with me, a neighbor or my sister, and I would commit to myself that I would knock on every door on like our street, which is a long street, regardless of what people wanted to buy or not. So that was I set my strategy. I would say one other thing to think about with the cookie program and even with other things is it's important to think about the why. So you talked about you wanted to maybe sell a lot of cookies to help fund a trip to Europe. I mean, I think people want to understand the why that you're doing things, because cookies are great and Thin Mints are especially good, but people really want to support you by buying Girl Scout cookies. So helping them understand how they're contributing to that, I think is very important and maybe would help you sell more cookies. So I think that translates also into careers where identifying your why here. So determining what sets you apart from, so kind of your own why, and how you can use that to your advantage in order to seek a promotion or get involved in a project. So advice I would share, but it sounds like you're doing a great job already.
Thank you. Do you have any advice for women looking to grow either their own businesses or a company they're in?
Yeah, I mean, growing their own businesses, I haven't necessarily been in that role, but I would think it's very similar. I mean, it's setting goals and working toward those goals, and really thinking about why you're achieving those goals, and also being able to change your goals as needed and change your approach. I think it's also, that's just as important, of being flexible, reconsidering things as you go along in the process.
Flexibility is pretty neat when having a business or working with somebody, because if you're not flexible, then you won't get anything done. That's bad.
Yes.
How do you balance your career, personal life, and your passions all at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, this is another tough one. I mean, whenever we talk about balance, and it's always been work-life balance and how to achieve that. And I think it's just so unique to each individual that it's never going to be a general answer. So I think everyone just needs to figure out what works for them. Personally, for me, it's more about quality. So if I spend 1 hour with my children, but I'm completely focused on them during that hour and not messing around on my phone or thinking about other things, that's more valuable to me than spending 3 hours with them and not being truly present. So the balance is always going to be tough, I think, but it's also important to be passionate about the work that you do. I think that helps to create balance, because you don't always feel like you're spending too much time necessarily at work and at home. I mean, I told you I'm a tax accountant, so you're probably thinking, how can you possibly be passionate about accounting work? But it's really problem solving and improving processes and working with the different teams. And that's really what I'm passionate about, is helping those people and getting to the end of those projects. So that really makes the day go by quickly, and it makes you not dread going to work, and having that clear line between work and personal life.
My dream job is being a dancer, but because I enjoy dancing and I work really hard at it. But I feel like doing dance and having a family would be really easy for me, and I don't know how, but I feel like it would.
Yeah, and it can be. I mean, like I said, it's all up to, I think, each individual to determine their own balance. So some people, I think, just find it easier to do than others. And it changes too. I mean, when you have young kids, it's probably harder, and hopefully it gets easier when they get older. My fingers are crossed.
I think it'll be easier for you because they're not so like needy, I guess. I know
Yes.
me and my brother are very needy. What do you believe will be the biggest challenge for the next generation of female leaders behind you, and what advice would you give them?
I think there's going to be a lot of challenges. I mean, social media introduces just a whole different thing, and along with technology, than what we've had to deal with so far. But overall, I think one of the biggest challenges we have now and will continue to have as women is really just the lack of confidence. And I think we're often, because of that, selling ourselves short. So when we don't need to, it's not necessarily all the time like society putting limitations on us, but instead we're putting limitations on ourselves. So I think confidence is just a huge thing that we need to continue to work for as women. I read a statistic recently where men will apply for a job if they meet maybe half of the requirements or the qualifications listed on the job posting, whereas women won't apply unless they meet almost all of them. And that's just one example of, we're not even approaching the opportunity. So we'll never be successful in actually getting it. So hopefully that's something that we continue to change, and confidence continues to come easily to us, or will start coming more easily to us, as it does to some of our male colleagues.
I do struggle with confidence myself sometimes. Most of the time I'm a very confident person, but I do struggle with it sometimes when I'm like down in the dumps and stuff, or I'm having like a hard time.
Yeah.
But I do believe that confidence is very important. My dance teacher talks about it constantly when we dance, and she's like, you need that confidence to dance good. And I'm like, I have that confidence, and I'm very proud that I have that confidence.
Yes, I mean, that is true. It's definitely something that's needed in dance when you're performing in front of a bunch of people. It would be very difficult, I would think, to have that confidence all the time. But if you got it, it's awesome.
How do you admire someone else's success without doubting your own self-worth?
I think this is another one that you get better with as time goes on. So I think early in my career, it was harder for me to be happy for other people when they achieved something. But as I've gotten older and kind of more comfortable with where it's become much easier. And I've also come to the realization where, I mean, the more that people in my network achieve and the more successes they have, it really elevates all of us. So it brings other opportunities to the whole group, the whole network, including myself. So there's no reason really not to be happy for them. I still have a very competitive nature. So it's not always the easiest thing if it's like a job I wanted or a position on a team I wanted, but I'm starting to learn and understand that there's usually a reason and a purpose behind that. So I've been better at coming to peace with those items and being happy for the people when they do have successes. And I would also say, I mean, it's different, I would say, when you start becoming like in a coaching or mentor role, because once you're in those sorts of role, I'm almost I get more satisfaction from their successes than my own sometimes. So I think it's more of a life lesson that comes a little bit with age, but definitely something that you could work on to get there.
Do you think you'll have that with your kids?
Oh, definitely. I mean, everything they do brings me pride. So I would say yes. I mean, I'm very happy when they have even little successes. So it is like that. But even at work, I mean, my teammates, I want them to be successful. I want them to get promoted. I want them to get all the opportunities that they deserve. And so I think it just takes a little bit of time to be able to get there, or it did for me, to be comfortable with where I'm at.
Thank you so much. And I think we're done with our questions. Katie?
Great.
Thank you both. We did have a question come in while you guys were chatting. Can you share how failure has helped you grow as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have failure in order to kind of realize your leadership style and where you need to adjust and correct. So I can't think of any immediate examples now, but I've obviously had lots of failures, little failures, probably big failures too. But it's really taking those and learning the lessons from those in order to adapt to your style to be able to be successful.
Absolutely. We're all going to have failures. It's just how we move forward with those. Lisa, I just want to thank you so much for your great advice and your personal stories that you've shared with us. And Marcy, thank you so much for being a fantastic moderator, which took a lot of confidence. Our next Unstoppable Women segment will be on March the 2nd at 4:30 with Gina Goings. Juliana Kilborn will also be joining us for our next interview. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you all then. Have a great evening.
Thank you.